On this Halloween weekend, we know that one of the things that a lot of people are looking forward to are the costumes. People wear several different types of costumes, and it's funny because when I was ordained a priest, I was very young looking. I looked like an altar server. And I wore my cleric's, my priest outfit, and people honestly thought it was a costume. And to be honest with you, I wear black just because it's slimming. And sometimes I don't wear it, especially if I'm traveling. Sometimes I don't want to be bothered because, strangely, some people actually recognize me because they watch my show on TV every Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. And it's funny because sometimes I don't wear my clerics because I don't want people to recognize me. Because people associate my priesthood as my persona. My black outfit almost explains to people who I really am. And so if I'm not wearing it, it looks like I'm wearing a costume. But one of the things about our Catholic faith is that we are supposed to put on Christ, not as a costume, but as who we really are. When people see us, they're actually supposed to see Jesus. Do they see that? If not, then we have on a costume. We're almost faking it until we make it. Thankfully, we have a hero in this gospel passage. Someone who took off his costume and became more the person he was called to be. Zacchaeus, one of my favorite people in all of the Bible, because it clearly said he was short in stature. And he literally went out on a limb just to see Jesus. That's where that phrase came from. He literally went out on a limb. And it reminded me of a time when I was a seminarian and I had a chance to meet, obviously, one of your favorites, Pope John Paul II. I met him. The first time I met him, I was in a large audience hall, lots of people, and I wanted to shake that man's hand. He truly is an image of Christ. He showed to us who Christ is. He was not acting, even though we know he was an actor. He didn't have a costume on. Who he was as a saint in the making is who we are all supposed to be. He was willing to put on Christ, and that's why I wanted to shake that man's hand. And I was only 2 people away from the edge of that seat, from the hallway's aisle. So I technically could reach out. The problem? There was a really tall seminarian blocking my way. So as he started walking down the aisle, shaking hands, I, inspired by Zacchaeus, climbed the seminarian. And I'm reaching down to shake the Pope's hands, a little frantic looking. And the Pope looked at me, probably thinking, this man need exorcism. And by the way, that's a pretty darn good Polish accent from a Filipino, right? But he pulled me in, and he started to look at me in my eyes, deeply, to the point where I thought he was looking into my soul. And the only thing I could think of at the time was, please stop looking into my soul. Because my soul is not perfect. Far from it. I commit sins and I put on a nice exterior. And so he looked deeply, and the only thing he said was, be a good priest. And I looked back at him and I said, okay. And I just started crying like a baby because I knew he was looking into my soul and he saw me without any costume. Have you ever looked at someone you love so deeply? Maybe it's your kids who act like idiots sometimes. And you look into their eyes and see that they're not idiots. They're just going through something. They're having a temper tantrum. I don't know. But have you looked into the eyes of someone you love and seen who they really are? That's why you love your spouse. That's why you love your children, because you see them for who they are. But have you ever looked at, say, like a homeless person? I work in the streets of Baltimore. The reason why I have my food truck is because during the pandemic, I packed my car up with food to give to the poor because they had no one to beg from. They were really hurting. And there was one person who caught my eye, because usually when you hand them food, they kind of look away because they're ashamed. But this one looked deeply into my eyes, and I knew he could see my soul. And more importantly, he let me see his. We live in a world where we can't even look at each other in the eyes. We don't teach that. Parents, teach your children manners. Teach them how to shake hands and look at people in the eyes so that we can see the window of the soul. When Jesus looked at Zacchaeus, he saw that he was a wealthy man and people didn't like him. But Zacchaeus allowed him into his home, which is not only real and literal, but it's also symbolic. Zacchaeus allowed Jesus to enter into his soul simply because he was looking at Jesus. I sometimes think that in our world, we don't look at Jesus, and we don't even look at each other, and we don't look at each other with Jesus's eyes. I want you to just do a little exercise right now. I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm a visiting priest. You can get mad all you want. I won't see you again for maybe another year if Father MJ invites me back. But what I want you to do is I want you just to practice. Look into the eyes of the other person sitting around you. And please, don't be creepy. Don't look at them like this. Just look at them. See them for who they are. And maybe you're going to get a glimpse of what God sees. Because in that first reading from the Book of Wisdom, what do we hear? How God overlooks the sins of his people so that they may repent. How do we get better at looking at God and even looking at ourselves and taking off the costumes and seeing us for who we really are? Yes, we are sinners, but we are God's children, and he loves us, and he looks at us as if we were the apple of his eye. Here is one technique, and this is another Polish great saint, Sister Faustina. Go to confession. Because in confession, what do? We look at our life. We admit that we have sinned. And we say to God, I have sinned, but I want you to still come into my house, even if it's in disarray, and forgive me so that I can see more clearly. And why is this key? Because when we have a pure heart, what do the Beatitudes say? Blessed are the pure of heart. They shall see God. You don't have to climb up a tree. You just have to go to confession. And maybe in this Halloween weekend, we let people see us, not as a costume, but who we really are. Christians.